As we can see, the brain is in every way the lord of our body. And even more, it seems to be also the lord of our psyche. No, it's not the same as our psyche. The brain is an environment for our symbolic me. So we can say that yes, it participates in our psyche, communicating with the symbolic me when we think. Accustomed to a static description of the world, where we treat all its elements as static objects, we have a difficulty to understand this dialogue between the symbolic me of the brain and the symbolic me of our psyche. There is still a dogma in the science that our brain is the seat of our psyche and therefore the seat of our symbolic me, because it seems obvious. But obvious only apparently. Since the symbolic me of the psyche exists only in a symbolic dimension, how could it in any way be superior and dominant over our brain, which exists not only symbolically through the ability to create thoughts, but exists really, physically? It seems to us when we think that then our brain obediently thinks whenever and whatever our psychic me wishes. Nothing could be more wrong. When we think, when we reflect, actually there are no thoughts that belong to the me of our psyche. We listen to the thinking of our brain. Of course, the me of our psyche always happens, just like our whole psyche, between us and the environment. And that is why, when we meditate, communicate with our own selves, despite the fact that it's actually a monologue of our brain me, our psychic me also happens outside the symbolic me of our brain. Einstein said that neither the place nor the time of the studied physical phenomena could be accurately described, but their situation could only be approximated. It's similar with the me of our psyche. It is located roughly somewhere between one environment and another, between the environment me of our symbolic brain and all the me we encounter in the form of other people. And the brain is not a property of our psyche because it's not possible. The brain is an independent entity that is busy with its own affairs, such as the control of all the functions of the organism it is connected physically with. It's true that this independent being, evolving for millions of years, communicates with the me of our psyche more or less willingly, but it's not the psyche servant. Maybe even the opposite. It's the Lord of the me of our psyche. Why? Because the right to monologue in a conversation has always the Lord. And the meditation is a monologue of the me of our brain. We say our brain, yes, our, because the closest to us, but not our in the sense of ownership. We don't possess it. Besides, the me of the brain is unpredictable. Let's think about it. If the brain has its own symbolic me, then it must also have its own psyche. And since there is a psyche, it's natural and urgent to ask what it is like. Is it similar to our psyche? So let's take a look at it. We must immediately notice the very unusual conditions in which the brain psyche functions. Namely, the only environment for our brain is the me of our psyche. Then, according to my definition of the psyche of the brain, like our psyche, is not owned by it, but happens somewhere between the symbolic me of our brain and the symbolic me of our psyche. Another very important point. Note that the brain generates anxiety. Everything I have written so far about the anxiety and how the nature deals with it was clearly a story not about our psyche, but about the psyche of the brain. Because our psyche is completely contained in the symbolic dimension. But in order to exist in the psyche dimension, I have already written about it, the anxiety must be rooted in the physical dimension. These roots of the anxiety is the physical phenomenon of electromagnetic brain waves emissions. Does the brain possess the me of our psyche? Also not. As I said a moment ago, it's impossible to possess something that falls under the law of relativity. And the me of our psyche is such an indefinite being. Of course, the symbolic me of the brain the same. It turns out that the me of our psyche, existing without any roots in the physical dimension, being only a symbolic being, is a pure abstraction, happening only in the moments of symbolic exchange with the environment. And when this exchange is not there, when there is no communication of any kind with any environment or with the brain me, then we are not there. So we exist as a psyche me only episodically. Apart from these episodes of existence, such as the symbolic exchanges with the environment or in a sleep dream, the existence of our mental me becomes a possibility only, a potential. This potential is transferred as a guest through the brain which our psychological me is the closest to. And the closest is the brain in which the psyche me uses certain areas that the brain does not use itself, such as the brain areas responsible for hearing and understanding speech, as well as those responsible for speaking. The symbolic me of our brain does not need these areas because its only interlocutor is our psyche me. The two me communicate soundlessly and wordlessly in the thinking process. But does that happen always so? Sometimes the symbolic me of our brain tries to regain the areas given to the me of our psyche. And then a thing happens that terrifies our psyche me. The areas of the brain that care for the brain me, they at the same time care for the me of our psyche. Thank you. Until next time.